Siyabingelela kwi-podcast Affirmation. We are live from Umhlanga eBeverly Hills Hotel. Ugama ngokucelana ngokwasikhakhane ngino former Minister of Finance ubaba Malusi Gigaba. Abanye bamazi ngokuthi unkanyezi ekhaya kubo. So baba Gigaba, ngicela ubingelele nje kafushane kwi-podcast yethu.
Siyabingelela kwi-podcast Affirmation nakubabukeli emakhaya. Njengoba umfoka sikhakhane seshilo, ngiuMalusi Gigaba, unkanyezi knowledge. Khona ke lesi4 engaliphiwa abantu abadala kodwa ke elasekhaya.
Singajabulela ukulazi.
Usilwanetshe.
Elasenkomeni.
Usilwanetshe. Siyajabula ukuthi sibe nani.
Siyabonga kakhulu. Mr Gigaba, ngokufisa kwethi interview yethu besithanda ukuthi ibe briefly ukuze nawe ukwazi ukusheshe ukhululeke ungaze uzuzele. But ke quickly nje ngisheshe ngihlala odabeni. Ngizothanda nje ukuthi mhlambe uintroduce kubantu kwabanye abangakwazi mhlambe especially the young ones. Usichaza ukuthi uGigaba ubani ukhulelephi ungene kanjani kwipolitics kuzafike la.
Ngazalelwe Showe eMlalasi.
Okay.
Ngizalwa umfundisi uGigaba wasesheshi nomama unomthandazi intombi yakwaDlamini. Bobabili abangasekho. Umama waye unesi. Ngingowesibili ekhaya ebantwaneni abahlanu. Nginkosana ke kodwa ngilama intombazane endala kunami. So sikhulele ngenxa ukuthi ubaba ube umfundisi. Move from one mission to the next until so I went to 8 different schools before ngifike university. And then I went to university la University of Durban Westville sekuyi UKZN Durban Westville campus manje. That's where I did my junior degree at teaching. And then I did a master's degree, which I completed in 1995, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
And then I started politics in the mid-80s, especially when the rents and rate boycott started. I joined particularly Isibongile Youth Congress as a young member, as a follower. At the time, because my best friend was Umawake, was a leading activist with UDF at Dandi. And so we followed. I experienced my first school boycott in 1986. But I really became conscious and consciously active when I arrived at university. Now I began to interact with political reading material, and I began to understand and be conscientized about the purpose of the struggle, about the nature of oppression in the country and what we are fighting for. I got drawn towards the African National Congress in the mid-80s, and I've never been interested in anything else. So people can live and form their own outfits. Mina, I've remained convinced about the policies and principles the African National Congress, its objectives, its mission, and its vision. Then at varsity I started being, being active. I also became active in the youth movement.
Okay.
I became the provincial secretary of the Young Christian Students. I became a member of the Provisional Regional Youth Committee. We were among the first groups in the country of young people in the 14 regions that existed back then that formed the ANC Youth League in 1990. And I rose in the ranks of the ANC Youth League until I became the regional chairperson of Southern Natal.
Okay.
Then I became the first provincial secretary of the ANC Youth League when the 3 regions, Natal, KZN, were merged in 1994. I became the first provincial secretary. Then in 1996, I was elected president of the ANC Youth League, a position which I held for 8 years. I was elected for 3 consecutive terms, which then means I've been a member of the National Executive Committee ANC for 26 years now. For that long. Which means I've been, for more than half of my life, I've been a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
We were ex-official at some point.
Ex-official. So, but I was directly elected into the ANC NEC in 2002, when I was now serving my final term as president of the ANC Youth League. And then I've been re-elected into the NEC ever since.
And Mr. Gigaba, there was a time when you resigned. I think it was in 2001. You resigned from the parliament.
So in 1999. So in let me just go a little bit back. In 1997, 98, sorry, at the National Congress of the ANC Youth League, the Youth League National Congress took a decision that the president of the ANC Youth League shall be full-time, shall be a full-time position. This was in response to a decision which had been taken by the Youth League NEC in 1997 that the president must no longer be full-time. Now, the National Congress in 98 took a dim view of that decision and felt that it was an attempt to marginalize me. And then in response, the Congress had a decision that the president must be full-time. But in 1999, the NECA Youth League, when we were going to the general elections, the NECA Youth League had a discussion over, I think, 3 sessions, where it was decided that, no, let the president go to parliament and be an MP, because we felt we needed to have the president leading the youth voice from within the corridors of parliament, from within the platform of parliament. Now, the National Congress in 2001 had a very heated discussion about that issue. But we took a decision in 1998 that the president must be full-time. The NEC had no power, no right to change that decision because it was a constitutional decision. And in so doing, the Congress was split in the middle on that issue. We had the Congress had proceeded well, the leadership had been elected. We were now in the final stages of the National Congress, and we were having this constitutional debate. So I called members of the NEC and I said to them, I would not allow the National Congress, which had gone so well, to be divided only because of me, you know? And I said to them, I'm going to address Congress and request those who are arguing for the president to remain in parliament to back down, so that the constitutional provision for the president to be full-time must be reaffirmed. And comrades, even though they felt strongly about the matter, agreed, because I felt I now needed to provide leadership as the president and not divide the Congress at my expense. I then addressed plenary and requested plenary to agree that the president must return to Luthuli House on a full-time basis. I had not consulted with my family, which back then, because I had just gotten married and but I had to take the decision thinking about the organization, and so it was agreed that yes, we will accept that. But in my view, in more than just uniting the National Congress and the ANC Youth League, there was value in the argument that was being now placed on the plenary, at the plenary of the Congress. Because members of the ANC Youth League felt that the president of the ANC Youth League plays a bigger role as the father figure, as the moral guardian of the organization. They need the president to be with the organization at all times. That requires that the president must not be distracted from exercising that responsibility by being in portfolio committees, in study groups, in attending three-line whips, sitting in parliament. If the president of the ANC Youth League is such a big responsibility that your voice and your power and influence can be felt within parliament without you being there. But if you are confined to that environment, your influence in the organization can in actual fact be diminished by your having to be in Cape Town every week when parliament is in session. But if you are not an MP serving full-time as president of the ANC Youth League, your voice, your views, your ideas can still be heard from within the rostrums of parliament without your physical presence inside there. And so I felt we needed to honor this call, this demand from members of the Youth League, because we were building an organization here that had been in existence for over half a decade. And we had entered the second decade of its existence. We were looking into the future. We wanted to build a robust, a vibrant, a resilient youth organization which could play its role and fulfill its mission among the youth and within the African National Congress. And that's why I felt, it's okay. We actually have to agree with this view that the president has got to be full-time.
I think to bring from what you've just said, I've got a scenario like ngale situation echaza. For example, quickly eThekwini region. There was a time we had Babu John Umchunu as a secretary and Minister Ubheki Cele as a chairperson. Then Ubheki Cele was deployed to be the MEC for transport. Then he spent most of the time in parliament, Nanga portfolio committee, and Nanga Pandle, wezwe. And that time, Ubaba Mkunu, so why he told his cat is plot 7 the incumbent. So, I think Babek season and now I think you take a very good decision to be full time. But
I can't comment about what was happening at Tegwini because I wasn't here. But more than anything, really, you need the president of the ANC Youth League to be full-time, to be in touch with the youth and have the pulse of young people in his hand.
So, Babu Gigaba, kusa sesaglento ye ANC Youth League. Our president be Youth League, bonke bane history yabo ukuthi during his tenure ubani ukhunjulwa ukuthi masiqala ko baba go from Anton Lembede kuze kuzofika ku Colin Mine. I think Colin Mine is the last serving president of the ANC Youth League for now. So mhlambe masibuka kuwena after abo Peter Mokaba o Lulu Johnson, yini ongathi mhlambe uyayiqhenya ngayo ukuthi wayenza and you brought a change kwi ANC Youth League? Mhlambe ama achievement wakho ongathi uyayiqhenya ngawo while you were serving as a president for 3 terms.
First and foremost, we built a modern post-apartheid resilient ANC Youth League. By 2004, when I stood down, the membership here ANC Youth League was higher than that of the African National Congress. We took pride in that. And we kept reminding them that, look, we're bigger than you. Secondly, we began to introduce the policy programs and structures of youth development. The National Youth Commission was launched in 1996 when I was president. We established the National Youth Development committees, which were changed later into the South African Youth Council. We introduced a national youth policy. The idea of a national youth policy was introduced whilst I was president. We introduced various youth development structures in municipalities, in the provincial governments, in the offices of premiers, and so a framework, youth development, including the launch of a National Youth Commission, South African Youth Council, and Umsobomvu Youth Fund, was created during my tenure. So it was towards the end of my tenure that we then debated extensively the existence of a National Youth Commission, Umsobomvu Youth Fund, and felt that it becomes strenuous. It becomes strenuous for there to exist one organization, the National Youth Commission, which formulates policy but doesn't have implementation powers and structures. And Umsobomvu Youth Fund, which doesn't formulate policy but implements policy. Now that dichotomy creates a problem for young people. And we felt that in terms of youth development framework, we needed to merge these two into a National Youth Development Agency, which would now be responsible for all functions of policy formulation, development, and implementation. We also introduced a program, HIV and AIDS, the campaign against HIV and AIDS, which we started very simple. What we would do is to go to every province. We would go to a shopping mall, a taxi rank, put up a podium, start playing music, and as people congregated to see what's happening here, because we used to work with Abo Kalawa Chesmi, we worked in Abo DJ Oskito, Abo DJ Christos, Da Vinci, Brothers of Peace, Boomshaka, Trompis. In actual fact, we played a very big role in promoting Kwaito as the ANC Youth League.
While we were fighting
HIV and AIDS. And so, as young people congregated to listen to the music, we would then address them and introduce a slogan, say ABC, abstain, be faithful, or condomize. And we would explain what we mean by that, because we felt it's our responsibility to go out to young people at a time when the HIV pandemic was wreaking havoc around the country. But in 2001, after the National Congress at Bloemfontein, we then introduced what I considered to be one of the most crucial programs for the ANC Youth League, the Youth Economic Participation Program, focusing on youth employment, skills development, and entrepreneurship. Now, we had marches to provincial governments, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange at various levels. We waged a campaign against racism and led actually to the release on parole ka Andrew Babeile in Vryburg and Kimberley. We led that campaign to a point where President Mandela himself invited me to go to Kimberley prison in response to our campaign, to visit Andrew, visited the families of the other 5 boys in Vryburg whom he had stabbed, spoke to their families, and put pressure then on the Department of Justice to grant Andrew parole. But the most important program was this one on youth economic participation, which then the generation of Abo Malema took up to the next level. But it was then unfortunately dropped subsequently. But it's a program which we had launched with all its pillars, particularly focusing on skills development. We met departments of labor, of education, the SETAs, the National Skills Fund, to discuss what needed to be done in order to provide opportunities for young people, to empower them, and to provide resources to work alongside Umsobomvu Youth Fund and the National Youth Commission to respond to the need for young people to get employment. So we modernized the ANC Youth League. We reintroduced militancy in the ANC Youth League in the post-apartheid era. Because we were not of the view as some people tend to argue, that the militancy of the ANC Youth League is confined to insulting ANC leadership, or and dealing with issues of leadership elections in the ANC. We felt that this was a misunderstanding of the history of the ANC Youth League. Because the founders of the ANC Youth League in 1944 did not fight to change ANC leadership up until 1948. So there was a 4-year period during which they worked under the then existing leadership. Now, the notion that the ANC Youth League are kingmakers distracts the ANC Youth League from its primary mission of serving young people, of bridging the generation gap between the young and old, of bringing the youth into the ANC and bringing the ANC to young people, as well as of bringing young people into politics under the banner of the ANC. So it was only in 1948 that the ANC Youth League started saying, no, we need to change the program of action of the ANC. And to change that program of action will require certain elements which, if the current leadership of the ANC are not prepared to comply with, we must then advocate for them to change positions, which they subsequently achieved in 1949 with the election of Dr. Moroka as the new president of the ANC. The ANC Youth League is brave.
We conference. The
ANC Youth League is brave. I mean, I can say that when the then Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Ramaphosa, when he finished the work of drafting the Constitution and came back to the ANC, NEC, to say he's completed this task, where does the ANC wish to deploy him next? It was us, I was president of the Youth League. It was us who said to him, but SG, why are you asking the ANC a question, the answer to which is so obvious? You are the SG of the ANC. You shouldn't have gone to Parliament in the first instance. You were supposed to be at HQ, Eshel House. Once you've completed that task, come back to Eshel House. If you cannot do that, then perhaps resign as SG to allow the ANC to elect a new SG. We then went to talk to President Motlanthe, who then was the General Secretary of NUM. I led that delegation. We met with Comrade Gwede Mantashe because Comrade Motlanthe felt he couldn't talk about that with us. He then asked Gwede Mantashe, who was his deputy at NUM, to talk to us. We spoke to him and said, we're here to fetch your GS to come and be the SG of the ANC. And Comrade Mantashe said, no, you can't do that. We need him here. We said, no. Comrade Motlanthe, NUM can't need Motlanthe more than the ANC does. And then after discussion, we agreed that he will only stand if nominated at the next national conference in 1997. And we said to them, we will ensure that happens. And if memory serves you well, because it serves me well, Comrade Motlanthe was elected unopposed as Secretary General of the ANC in 1997. So that thing which the ANC Youth League did in 1949 would not be the last time that we would do it, even up to the point of the election of President Zuma as president of the ANC in Polokwane. The ANC Youth League from time to time intervenes in the ANC in that way to ensure that there is a change in direction in the African National Congress. And I think at all times we've been correct.
But iqala nile la ANC Youth League ibonakala sengathi is being used to fight certain battles of the ANC, especially the factional battles of the ANC.
Iqala, I think, after 1997, when the ANC Youth League becomes consumed by the virus it had vowed to destroy. And leadership here, ANC Youth League, are now called kingmakers. And that sinks into their heads, and they start acting as such kingmakers. That would cause a downward slide from which the ANC Youth League would not recover, which has landed it at this stage where you now have the National Youth Task Team that is split between ANC, is split among ANC factions, that is unable to go to Congress because they are, you know, they've collapsed into these factions of the ANC, unable to find their way out, and depend on the bishops in the ANC to give them a go-ahead for them to do anything. And so the youth have landed themselves or allowed themselves to land at a point where they cannot exercise their independent thinking and role about the leadership of the ANC Youth League and its programs. They depend on who is in the leadership of the ANC. Even at a time when we were viewed to be close to President Mbeki, we never allowed the leadership of the ANC to impose their views on us about leadership, about our policies and our programs. We always debated these on our own. We would engage them only on policy debates, but not on program and leadership issues, because we felt that this was the primary prerogative of the youth of the ANC. Because at the end of the day, we elected a leadership of the youth, not a leadership of factions of the ANC among the youth. And that made the ANC Youth League to be vibrant, to be able to disagree and disagree. I mean, to agree and disagree with the leadership of the ANC as and when we needed to do so, based on what we thought was correct at the time. And disagreements with the leadership of the ANC are not criminal. The ANC Youth League reserves the right to disagree, even fundamentally, with the leadership of the ANC. They reserve the right to be as wrong as they want to be. And the ANC must therefore, in engaging the youth, exercise political intervention rather than a disciplinarian approach. Because the youth are not mere children. They've got political minds. They've got political consciousness. If the ANC must correct the Youth League, it must do so through political engagement rather than a disciplinary approach.